Mr. Rob Gresham, and I asked him if there was any kind of special introduction that he would like me to give. And he said I could just call him You02. So he's You02. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Rob Gresham.
Thanks. I've been, just a little bit about me, I've been in South Carolina since 2006. I've done 26 years of military peace. I work for Foundstone Services, which is a subset unit inside McAfee or Intel Security. I also work in the South Carolina Army National Guard, and you'll see a bunch of my guys here running around with little shirts on with that little logo over there. And yes, I'm probably one of the few people on the face of the planet that still actually have an active Yahoo account that have not transitioned to Google Mail. So unfortunately, that's one of those pieces. What we're going to kind of talk about today is threat intelligence from a perspective of what you guys normally do for threat intelligence, from what I see in the industry, from being part of the services and seeing what's going on in the private sector, and from what I learned from the military side of things. And what we're going to cover is what's Threat Hill, where are we now, what are we doing, and then go through the pieces of why is there a parallel universe to things that we've already done, and why we need a methodology. Because a lot of the things that we get are cool honeypots and all these cool things that we get to play with. And one of the unique things that we don't understand is that there's a methodology for finding bad guys. Hunting isn't new, right? Hunting has been going on since the existence of man. And the reality is that this new sexy thing that we talk about hunting, what is intelligence, right? Well, what your intelligence is now, present day, is exactly Mrs. Doubtfire, right? It's a fraud. It's a mistake. Because the reality of threat intelligence, right, it's not hunting. Hunting isn't threat intelligence. It's not behavior analytics. It's not indicators of compromise. It's not reverse engineering. It's not any of these things. It's not reactive. It's a process, right? It's sexy. Sort of, maybe not, right? But the requirement and the proactiveness of threat intelligence is what's needed, right? And there's three really distinct levels from a military perspective that I'll transition to a commercial perspective. Leadership board members want to have strategic intelligence. They want to know not what's happening right now on my network, but how does it affect my procurement 2 to 3 years out. SOC operators want to know what's operationally decision-making. What do I need to make a decision now? Where do I need to put my controls now? Where are my tactical things, right? We have to have a process for analysis, right? Analysis, when we talk about machine learning, threat intelligence is a part of machine learning because it's a process in order to derive difference, right? And that's why machine learning and AI makes all the buzz, because it removes the human. But the reality is when you look at something and you have a gut instinct, when Rob says, you know what, I've seen honeypots, I don't really feel for them in ICS because there's too much of a safety factor, that's a gut and experience thing. The best analysts I've found is the one between your 2 ears, right? I can automate all the tools in the world, but the analysts that do the best have the brain and thought process to look above the problem and start to build those products for TTPs. Start to look at the INTs, right? The SIGINTs, the MASINTs, the OSINTs, open source intelligence, signal intelligence, measures intelligence, geo-intelligence, imagery intelligence. All these things are cool in the military space, but what do they mean to me? Mostly right now, open source intelligence is key. Because actors in your space, they want to advertise. They want to talk about the stuff that they got on you, right? That's their motivation, right? Ransomware, motivated by greed, right? I want to make you pay for something. So we've got to understand this shared operational picture, either whether it's contextually in our country, in our region, or it's even lower in our vertical or in our business. Like the threats to a financial institution and the threats to an industrial control system are completely different spaces. So you had to sit here and stare at this one picture. So for the ladies out there, here's something for you, right? And the reality is that we can't be male chauvinists up here in this predominantly male environment, right, sometimes. But we really have to understand that this is for everybody. This threat intelligence piece is shared situational awareness for everybody. And one of the things that you'll hear me, if you follow my Twitter feed, is that free the data, right? Because data from my vendor, from FireEye, from Cylance, from CloudStrike, the one thing about VTI that makes it awesome is they're freeing the data. They're giving everybody that puts in a piece to play the game, to be able to compete at the same level. Because when we talk about later down the road, integrated adaptive cyber defense is an option, and it's something that we need to have. So, talking about this parallel universe and creating your thoughts or your own reality, one of the things that I love about Chris's talks and the way Chris is going with psychology is a lot of people tell me that, well, this is my reality. This is how I see it. You don't understand my threats. That's exactly true. Because perception is your reality. And that's really the problem, right? Or the solution. Because every organization runs that reality their own way. You're looking for the needle in the needle stack. When you're talking about parallel universes between counterterrorism and cyberspace, something we've been building capabilities and techniques for the last 10 years on, counterinsurgency operations, for those of you in the military that have heard that, or the asymmetrical warfare, all that's living in cyberspace now. The same problem that we dealt with solving the Wild Wild West and populating that and getting rid of crime and the bandits are going around and stealing trains, we're reliving that in cyberspace. The question is, how do we control it? What have we learned from the past that we can travel to the future? They're social and cultural in nature, right? Look at Anonymous, look at activists, look at strip teams, look at cybercrime, and you see the same pattern socially or culturally over and over. Most people, if they're looking at threat intelligence, understand that when they start seeing threats, they're looking in Europe and the Middle East to watch them pop. The Middle East first, and then those attacks end up showing up in the United States in droves. Or they go and play in Brazil for a little few times. Different things are going on in different places. So if you can't have a global view, you can't focus in on your region, right? You need to kind of study those behavioral patterns. And what we really need is a team effort. That's the only way this is going to work. So we talk about a team. One of the things that I brought to my team that made it kind of weird is that the analysts and the operators didn't really see eye to eye. The military decided that they were going to stick intelligence analysts, I know, military intelligence, oxymoron, right? They're going to stick them with the operators that are going to give incident response. Well, the problem the first time we did it, what failed was, I took the analyst, I need to give the analyst information. So here's the log, here's the phone, report everything, write it up on the board, and let me know what you're doing. It was a complete and epic fail. Because I didn't let the analysts do what they were good at. And that is to analyze what's going on. So, as we evolved in the next few years and the things that we did, I linked up with other operators that I've been. I've been an Army Ranger all my career. It's in my blood, it's in who I came, how I came. And being a part of that team and that effort and that mentality, does anybody know, let's pause there. I got one rubber ducky thing. Can somebody tell me a predominant Army Ranger that, there was a football player, let's play that.
That's Ellen.
Back there.
That's me.
Come on up. Does anybody know one that's alive? He works for the
Rob Gresham.
No, I don't play football. Not that football. Thank you, appreciate it. So one of the things that I have a lot in special forces and the teams, because I was also, I'm a ranger 2 times over, right? I was an Army Ranger for 75th Ranger Regiment, but also I was a school ranger with like a few others in the room that I know here. But the key is that when you're playing on these teams, they have different ways to deal with different things. But one of the things that happens a lot is that we play with a bunch of other people in the same space. And we have what happens when you have 2 people that have the same mentality like a Navy SEAL, and maybe you have Army Rangers. You have a different mentality and a different scope. But that's the same thing that's occurring in the operations teams, in the security operations, in the threat intelligence team, and the security operations team. Because what you end up with, some kind of epic rap battle, right? Where they fight back and forth. By the way, if you like rude behavior manifest, it's awesome. And this rap battle, for those of you in soccer, it's pretty funny. But so the reality is that it was inappropriate to bring this presentation. I tried once and it didn't work out really well. But the IR team, they kind of think they're Navy SEALs, right? They're the badasses of the environment. They go out, they solve the problem, they create process, they take out the bad guys. But the reality is that they need SecOps. They need the capability of force protection. They need a different skill set. Now, the cool thing about either one of these teams is they both do similar missions, and they both do separate, unique missions. And those two mission sets make them epically cool when they work together, right? When you look at how bin Laden was taken down and how that process works, who was doing what? When you look at Black Hawk Down, who was pulling the security so that the other guys could go in and do what they needed to do? The key is that we work together as a team. It's how we organize those teams and that team dynamic. So one of the things that we talk about in Ops Fusion and Dynamics is that there has to be what people need, right? There's a give and take in this process. There's a relationship between the analysts and the operators, the guys that are actually running the systems or actually trying to go out and solve the security problem that's going out there. Analysts need detailed information that's relevant to their situation, right? You just can't give them an IP hash and a domain and expect them to solve world hunger. It's not going to happen. They're not going to fix you in that realm. They're not going to be predictive. They're not going to be able to draw a campaign in that process. They need to have their own internal reconnaissance so that they can see things a little bit before, right? But who drives the reconnaissance process? Is it just the IR guys that are driving the reconnaissance? Or is it the analysts looking at the terrain and trying to figure out how that network works, right? Because one of the talks we do a class, shameless plug, we do a class that's threat intelligence that teaches the intelligence preparation of the battlefield, which is basically what every IR guy does inherently in his process. When he arrives in the environment, he tries to find the key terrain, and in that key terrain process, what is important, like in Rob's case, what's important in the ICS system, I don't want them to get to. And then I go work from that key terrain, I work out. And I expand my security capability until I can find or make contact with the enemy. And then I try to choke them at different points. These same tactics at the military level apply in security operations and should apply in defending your networks. Because has anybody protected all the things? Has anybody got a security solution that protects all the users, all the equipment? Yeah, you can, right? The reality is you have to, some things, the risk of some things being compromised is okay. The question is what can you learn from that, right? How can you derive those techniques, tactics, and procedures that are actually occurring? How can you build on those skills and abilities and when and where to act, right? Who has the authority to act when they need to? So what that fundamentally leads to who provides what for whom, right? Patterns, associations, and awareness and prediction capabilities is something that an analyst is supposed to do. They're supposed to study the threat. They own it. It's theirs. When they do that process and they own the threat, then they can give you the capability to understand what's really going on. They'll build and develop it over time if you talk to like Paul Melson, where they know what the actors are doing because they're seeing it every day in every piece of how that cybercrime environment is affecting them and how they're transitioning to different tool sets. They're using different capabilities. They're coming at different angles. They're doing different techniques, all in the presence of trying to make some money, right? The motivation. Operators are really about surprise, speed, and precision. What kind of reconnaissance, what kind of feedback mechanism from their analysis feeds back to the analyst process and helps them go and find more bad guys, right? And then the preventive process of overwhelming and protection. So as we come into a process, and this is what I'll share with you is the methodology from the Special Forces teams. F3AED has been coined in different pieces in commercial Optiv is using it. A couple of other companies are using it. Optiv is the biggest one. But when I go and start looking at open source research and looking at the people that are actually talking about F3ADD, which is find, fix, finish, analyze, exploit, and disseminate, what I find is that I hadn't seen an operator 1 in them. And the problem with finding an operator in one of them is that how do they have experience in this process, right? You talk about the Air Force's model for the OODA loop, orient, was observe, orient, decide, and act, right? This is a soft version or a special operations version of the same thing. Decide, detect, deliver, and assess. In the middle of it, it's the fusion process. And think of a matrix of lines running back and forth. But for clean's sake, I want you to see this process without all the lines. Right? You want to identify, starting out by deciding, right, how all am I to ride this ride? Right? Am I able to identify my high-value information, establish priorities, and assign collection tasks? You do that with that full intelligent preparation valve. Now, I know tries that you go look it up, but really what it is analyzing the attack and applying how they move. What's the TTP of an adversary to move in their environment? Well, pick one. There's a cyber kill chain, there's a MITRE attack model, there's managed attack cycles, there's silence, or what is it, CrowdStrike's model, the attack model, everybody's got a flavor, right? But the cool piece of it all go to the same thing. It's still an attack model. It's still the same steps and procedures and processes. They go. Some just go deeper than others, some transition and coalesce some things together, make it easier. But that process applies to intelligence and applies to how the battlefield works. Because how many people know what a cloud is? You can give me a So I will give a lockpick for the best answer for a cloud. So who's what's that? What's that? Other people's computers. Close. Cloud. Anybody? Cloud? Next, come on. Back there in the back. Pick it up. Interconnected things of all things, okay? I said cloud, right? So context is key, right? There you go. What's it made of? Two molecules, right? So the reality is that your perception, your context of the situation really matters to how you perceive it. So when you look and you're trying to find the bad guys, you've got to understand the context of that environment to find it, right? You've got to go after those high-value identifications and then focus your sensors and locate the enemy where you want to find them, right? And then fixate on them. Once you go through the fixation process, you're going to try and maintain and track on them, right? Whether you're doing it in open source and you're tracking a campaign from multiple vendors and multiple capabilities, or you're working with Proofpoint or some other product vendor who's providing you extended or enhanced threat intelligence capabilities, you want to be able to track the programs because really attackers are really on 4 motivation cycles. And that's really the key. Right? The first one, nation states, want to keep low and slow. They want to be able for you not to see them until they're ready for you to see them. Right? Cybercrime, it's all about the money. I got to make money. Right? Hacktivists, they want to demand that you do something that forwards their cause. Script kiddies want notoriety. When you look at the motivation and you can reduce your risk to motivation, then you can move to a finish, right? And you can contain and eradicate that capability or reduce your risk, right? And then you can refocus your sensors to go even smaller. But you have to be able to look at it from that perspective. And that's when you start to deliver a security model or a security capability that gets you there. And then exploit. Use what you've learned and share that picture, target their actions, look at exploitation, share that with other people so that when you disseminate it, everybody learns on the same process. Dissemination can happen internally and externally. Start small and grow big. And get to a point where you can manage all of the things. But if you don't care about what's important, when we talk about pointing at at the intelligence preparation of the battlefield, you have to focus on the key terrain. You have to focus on the things that are important that make that mission run. So look at your business and what makes your business run. A prime example is a lot of people want to protect the web servers. They want to, and I'm going to beat on David a little bit, but you want to protect the web server, right? That's great. That's awesome. But where's the data? Where's the stuff that the actor wants? It's not on the web server. It's in the database. So maybe you point at the database and you do those controls there. So as we're moving forward, we want to enhance, integrate, and orchestrate. We want to enhance the information that we're looking at. We want to integrate all of our information across our systems and then orchestrate our response mechanisms, right? We want to use those honeypots and those sandbox to forward the information or the indicators that they find to other security devices. This is the essence of integrated adaptive cyber defense. Johns Hopkins did improve with the several tool sets that are in industry right now that you can do this best of breed. And that's great. You can do it with a few single vendors. It just depends on how you want to go about the process. But if you can't orchestrate these processes, you're not going to get efficient. IT is spending more time and energy on the systems that they're keeping available than they're doing to prevent the systems. It's half the team running to secure it than there is to keep it running on a day-to-day basis. So my challenge to you is only the strong will survive. If you wax on, wax off, right? You got to rinse, lather, repeat. And some of the best security operators I know can't get out of the shower on a regular basis because they keep doing the basics right. They rinse, lather, repeat, and they keep doing it over and over. You need to know how tall you are to be able to ride this ride. It is a maturity process, right? Start small, work big, get good at what you're doing. Focus on automating the response mechanisms. Ransomware is a particular type of threat. Learn how to mitigate it in your environment. Shrink the availability time that it has. Respond, right? Because it's more about people, process, and technology. And people, elevated capability in that environment that define processes, those processes, when used with technology, make them effective. Making more people effective with technology is where we're going. That's why machine learning is there. So in my last thing, and the last thing I want to carry with you before I do a mic drop, pretty much, because I think I'm out of time, hunt what matters and automate everything else. If you can take that away, here's my Twitter handle, follow me if you choose. If not, you can heckle me like my crew back here. If you see them around here, floating around. I've been lucky so far. Thank you and appreciate it.